For over a century, the Western world viewed the Caucasus through a very specific lens. Foreign travelers and military officers documented a hyper-masculine society defined by horses, silver-mounted weaponry, and an unforgiving code of martial honor. But there is a logistical flaw in this perspective. History clearly shows that no society survives for centuries on the high-risk economy of raids and warfare alone. Maintaining a permanent warrior state requires a massive, invisible infrastructure, months of stable rations, advanced medicine to treat trauma, and systems to resolve blood feuds. Outside observers rarely saw this infrastructure. Under strict Caucasian etiquette, foreigners were barred from entering the inner sanctum of the home, the ane. They only ever documented the external, male-dominated facade. The unwritten constitution of this world, the Adyghe Khabze, actually engineered a dual state separation of powers. The men managed the high-risk Department of Defense, while the women held absolute sovereignty over the Department of the Interior. We find the legal foundation of this power in the Tlyuase, or blood price. If a male noble was killed, the perpetrator's family paid a steep fine. But if a woman of the same class was killed, the price was exactly double. A male warrior was seen as a defender, but a woman was the absolute guarantor of the population's survival. The high bridal price, or Uase, functioned as a massive socio-economic insurance policy. If a husband divorced his wife without a proven cause, the entire sum was retained by her family, creating a permanent financial shield for the woman. Unlike a married woman in 19th century Britain or America, who lost all legal identity to her husband, a Circassian woman's dowry, her jewelry, her garments, and her personal property, remained her untouchable assets throughout her marriage. This control over the family's resources allowed women to direct the household's labor toward military logistics. They engineered the region's specific tactical advantage: ultra-compact, high-calorie rations like smoked cheeses and fermented meats that allowed the cavalry to move without supply wagons. Women also monopolized the region's most valuable export. Applying this gold thread required mathematical precision to create a rigid, durable relief. These luxury garments and saddles functioned as a diplomatic currency, used to secure alliances with the Ottoman Empire and the Crimean Khanate. By managing the household's strategic reserves and producing the nation's primary diplomatic trade goods, the female-led interior served as the financial backbone for the entire military apparatus. While the men operated the machinery of war, the women controlled the machinery of biology and recovery. Under a medical system called Uase, female surgeons utilized deep empirical science to treat traumatic injuries. They developed multi-component antiseptics from tree resins to prevent gangrene and performed the complex extractions of bullets and bone fragments. Beyond physical repair, women were the primary engineers of the warrior psychology. The Khabze required mothers to withhold any public display of affection from their children, a practice of deliberate emotional distance. This was an institutionalized strategy to forge a specific type of soldier. By denying outward comfort, mothers trained their children to suppress fear and ignore physical pain, creating the Stoic mindset required for high-intensity warfare. As the children grew, the grandmother, or nane, took over their moral conditioning. Through the narration of epic folklore, she installed the rigid ethical compass that dictated how a person should behave in every social and military situation. By managing surgical recovery and psychological conditioning, the women of the interior provided the functional foundation for every warrior on the front lines. This power was earned through a rigorous social transit. A young bride entered her husband's family encased in a leather corset, a physical tool for posture and discipline. During this period, she was subjected to a code of silence, forbidden from speaking to her husband's elders. This phase of submission eventually ended in her rise to Matriarch, or Guashe. In this position, she held final authority over the distribution of grain and meat, deciding exactly how the family's resources were consumed or stored. Even in public arenas like the traditional dance, women exercised social control. Physical distance was strictly enforced, yet a woman could use her choice of partner to publicly shame a man. A refusal to dance with someone who had acted dishonorably created a social stigma that was nearly impossible to remove. In moments of extreme violence, women held a legally binding veto. If men drew their weapons to kill one another, a woman removing her headscarf and throwing it between the blades instantly halted the fight. By law, the men had to lower their weapons and disperse. The status of the Circassian woman was distinct from her global contemporaries. She was not a legal nonentity like women in the West, nor was she physically immobilized like women in many Eastern empires. The final validation of this dual state structure occurred when the Russian Empire eventually broke the external male defense lines in the 1860s. When the male defenses collapsed, the women moved to the front lines, fighting in the final sieges and walking the mountain paths into a mass exodus. They transitioned from managing the interior resources to ensuring the survival of the refugees. The Khabze functioned as a dual-state system. While the men defended the borders, the women managed the resources, the ethics, and the biological survival of the nation.